With Hillary, I guess what really turned me off was what I called the secret police. When she hired this fleet of detectives to go around examining all of the women who had been identified with Clinton, not for the purpose of divorcing Clinton, not for the purpose of getting him to stop, but for the purpose of developing blackmail material on these women to cow them into silence.
He starts to bite on my top lip, and I try to pull away from him. And then he forces me down on the bed. And I just was very frightened. And I tried to get away from him, and I told him no. And I didn't want this to happen. But he wouldn't listen to me.
She walked over just about that time. And she stood there and she looked at me and she said, I just want you to know how happy we are for all the things that you do for Bill and in this campaign. And I just sort of nodded and was going to turn away, and she grabbed a hold of my arm and my hand at the same time, and she pulls me into her, and this smile fades to this very harsh expression. And she said, do you understand everything you do? And I could have fainted. I mean, I get cold chills now, just remembering it. And that was her way of saying, we know, I know, and you better stay quiet. I mean, I couldn't take it as anything else, and which I did. Even when she came over to greet me, there was just a coldness. She had this smile on her face, but it was very, I'm sorry. You know, even after all this time. It was so cold, you know. But then the second expression was frightening.
Danny Ferguson handed her a piece of paper, and it had a number on it. He said that the governor would like to see you up in this room. And she said, well, what does he want? And he said, oh, he'd just like to meet you, and it's just routine. This happens all the time.
I believe that what Mr. Clinton did to me was wrong.
We're back with Hillary Clinton apparently tomorrow morning. We have to have your comment on this. The Arkansas state worker is going to file this sex harassment suit. What do you make of it?
I have nothing to add to what's already been said by the White House.
Betsey Wright, Clinton's former chief of staff, admitted she had been hired to conduct media smear campaigns against anyone planning to tell the truth about the governor's sexual habits.
In November, she wrote on her Twitter page, she said, every survivor of sexual assault deserves to be heard, believed, and supported.
That's interesting. I wasn't ever heard and supported and believed. She tried to basically derail me. He has to pay for what he's done.
Does it upset you at all? Doesn't bother you? Onward to calls. Rapid City, South Dakota with Hillary Rodham Clinton. Hello.
I'd like to ask you some questions about Kathleen Willey. Mr. President, you've seen television footage of you standing on a rope line with Donald Byer, Lieutenant Governor Donald Byer, asking Mr. Byer for the name of Kathleen Willey. You've seen that footage, haven't you?
I don't know that I've seen it, but I am aware that it exists.
You sent Nancy Hernreich, who was present on that day, to go get her telephone number, didn't you, sir?
I don't believe so.
Do you recall having received her telephone number, calling her that night?
No, sir, I don't.
Do you recall inviting her to meet with you at your hotel that night?
No, sir, I do not.
Do you know of any reason Kathleen Willey's telephone number would appear on your toll records from your room in Williamsburg?
No,
you didn't call her.
No, I'm not denying that I called her, sir. You asked me a specific question. I won't deny that I called her. I don't know whether I did or not.
Matter of fact, you called her twice that day, didn't you, sir?
I don't recall. I may well have done it, and I don't know why I did it.
I would like people to know what the Clintons are capable of doing to people like me who perceivably get in their way. She's hired political operatives. She's hired private investigators all along the way. They've been on her payroll for years. The Terry Lenzner's, Jack Palladino, Pelicano out in California. This is what they do. Melanie Morgan, who was out in California, who's a well-respected, well-known talk show host, met Jack Palladino and said, aren't you embarrassed and ashamed what you did to Kathleen Willey? And he looked right at her and he said, the only thing I'm ashamed of is that Hillary didn't pay us in a timely fashion. She wants us quiet. She wants us silent.
What would a White House run by her be like?
Terrifying. 2 days after my deposition in the Paula Jones case, I opened my front door. I live out in the country. Mm-hmm. There was an animal skull sitting on my porch. That was put there by somebody. I have never seen before that, never saw any kind of an animal part. I have dogs and cats. It was sitting on my porch facing the door when I opened it. I know that Hillary and Bill Clinton participated in hiring people like Jack Palladino, like Terry Lenzner, like Pelicano out in California to intimidate me, Juanita Broderick, Paula Jones, Gennifer Flowers, Dolly Calbrani, and others.
You ran into a stranger who mentioned the loss of your cat and your cat's name and your children by name.
I didn't run into him. He approached me one morning. He said, that Bullseye was a nice cat. That was followed by, how are your children? And he named them by name. That was followed by the naming of very dear friends' 2 children. That was followed by, did you ever get those tires fixed? He said, you're just not getting the message, are you?
My grandmother always had a saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I think they're capable of anything. I've been getting calls from 911 saying, Miss Miller, we understand there's an emergency that you're about to commit suicide. And that happens about twice a year. That's been happening since my mother died 5 years ago. Is it a coincidence? No, it's not a coincidence. I always say, excuse me, but where's this call coming from? Is it coming from Pine Bluff, from Little Rock? And they said, well, the number is 1-800, and they tell me the number. And I call the number back, and it is a 911 call. But I say, who made this demand that you call me and keep me from committing suicide? And they always say, it was a family member. Or sometimes they'll say it's a close friend, but we can't give that name. We can't even give you the number they called us.
The Clintons sicked the IRS on Paula Jones and Gennifer Flowers and all of the conservative groups that were trying to investigate them. So anyone who was anyone in Washington and still is petrified to talk. You know that Gary Johnson, a lawyer here in Little Rock, lives right across from Gennifer Flowers at the Quapaw Tower, that he has installed a security camera for the protection of his own apartment, and it caught Billy coming and going into Jennifer's apartment. The Clintons sent their goons. They beat him nearly to death, but broke both collarbones, broke his elbows. They beat him up and left him for dead. The problem is so big. If I wrote this as a fictional story, people would say, oh, right, that's just too wild. Well, let me say this about the body trail. They have these truth suppression techniques, and one of them is to put up straw men and then knock them down. So let's say there's 100 people on that list, and let's say that 75 of them are bogus, okay? So they can knock down those 75 and then make it look like the whole list is bogus and ignore the boys on the track, and especially Vince Foster.
The questions you're asking, I think, betray the bias of this operation that has troubled me for a long time. Frankly, her husband had committed suicide. She apparently was out of money. And I thought, who knows how anybody would react under that.
A few hours after she was assaulted in the Oval Office, Kathleen Willey's husband, Ed, was found in a wooded area, dead of a gunshot wound to the head. A few months earlier, White House counsel Vince Foster's body had also been found in a wooded area. He also died of a gunshot wound to the head. In both cases, the cause of death was ruled a suicide. The gun that killed Ed Willey was a Smith & Wesson .38 Special. It was unregistered. A .38 revolver was also found near Vince Foster's body. It was made from parts of at least 2 separate weapons, and it had 2 different serial numbers, and was too old to trace.
Who is Gennifer Flowers? You know her.
Oh, yes.
How do you know her? How would you describe your relationship?
Very limited, but until this, you know, friendly, but limited.
Was she a friend, an acquaintance? Does your wife know her?
Oh, yes.
Sure.
She was an acquaintance, I would say a friendly acquaintance.
She's alleging, and is described in some detail in a supermarket tabloid, which she calls a 12-year affair with you.
That allegation is false.
You know, Bill talked to this woman every time she called, distraught, saying her life was going to be ruined. And, you know, he'd get off the phone and tell me that she said sort of wacky things.
There's a recession on, times are tough, and I think you can expect more and more of these stories as long as they're down there handing out money.
Last night I sat and watched Bill on 60 Minutes. I felt disgusted, and I saw a side of Bill that I had never seen before. Judge for yourself if this is the way a man talks to a woman who is just a friendly acquaintance.
If they ever hit you with it, just say no and go on. There's nothing they can do. If everybody's on record denying it, you got no problem. If they don't have pictures.
The reason I was calling was to tell you that a couple things. This last Wednesday, someone got into my apartment.
So somebody broke in your apartment?
Well, there wasn't any sign of a break-in, but the drawers and things, there wasn't anything missing that I could tell that somebody had
gone through all your stuff.
And gone through my stuff.
Think they were trying to look for something on us?
I think so. Well, I mean, why else?
You weren't missing any kind of papers or anything?
Like what kind of papers?
Well, I mean, any kind of personal records or checkbooks or anything like that, phone records? They may have my phone records on this computer here, but I don't think that doesn't prove anything.
Well, that's true, but I just wanted to tell you about that.
Wow.
Okay, well, I'll be back in touch, and you will let me know if you know anything I need to know about.
I will.
Okay?
Have you heard the excerpts of those alleged tapes?
Yes, and read the transcript, sure.
When you hear someone whose voice, is it your husband on those tapes?
Who can tell? I don't have any idea, but he's talked to her. We know that. I sat there in the kitchen one night when he returned a call.
And when you hear something like "goodbye, baby,"
oh, that's not true.
That didn't happen.
No, of course not.
Or he says, you know, they don't have the pictures.
Well, I'll tell you what. This was a woman who at least pretended that her life was ruined because somebody had alleged that she had a relationship at some point with Bill Clinton. Sam, if somebody's willing to pay you $130,000 or $170,000 to say something, and you get your 15 minutes of fame, and you get your picture on the front page of every newspaper, and you're some failed cabaret singer who doesn't even have much of a resume to fall back on, and what's there she's lied about, you know, that's the daughter of Willie Horton, as far as I'm concerned.
I would have been a gutless wonder to quit over things I thought were unfair and insubstantial.
Through all this controversy, have you ever found yourselves at home fighting, honestly?
No. No, not about anything important. We fight about what movie we want to see.
Yeah.
You know.
That's the kind of stuff we fight about.
Because, you know, it's hard. I mean, okay, it's hard to think that you never at some point said, who is Gennifer? You know, who the hell is she? And it's like, you know, I mean...
I know who she is. I mean, I know who she is.
And you know what her problem is?
She's got lots of problems.
Yeah.
Let us all join together in welcoming the next President of the United States of America, Governor Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and Chelsea Clinton.
I find with Bill and Hillary, it's never surface. I think that whatever seems to appear, there are always about 3 or 4 layers underneath. It's really the fact. They really don't support women, and their motivations are clearly really not about women. On my car key sets, there's a safety deposit box key, and I'm wondering if I should make public what's in that safety deposit box. This would really do it. And it's something that he's aware that I have, and it's probably the reason that, you know, I'm still running around. It's been sort of my safety net. And that's another decision, as to whether to release it or hold on to it and hope that it helps with my safety.
remember that case where I represented that guy? It was a fascinating case. It was really an interesting case. This guy was accused of raping a 12-year-old. Of course, he claimed that he didn't. He took a lie detector test. I had to take a polygraph, which he passed, which forever destroyed my faith in polygraphs. But the prosecutor had evidence, among which was his underwear, which was bloody. I happened to be going to New York, and I took the underpants with me. I got special court order. And I went to Brooklyn, where this man, whose name I now cannot remember, he would analyze bloodstains if he got interested in a case. And so the story from the grapevine was if you could get him interested in the case, then, you had the foremost expert in the world willing to testify, assuming that it came out the way you wanted it to come out. So I went back and told Malin Gibson that I had, I can't remember the man's name, but I cut out his who's who, and I've done all this stuff, and I handed it to Malin Gibson. I said, well, this guy's ready to come from New York to prevent this miscarriage of justice.
How did it turn out?
He plea bargained. We got him off. It was time served in the county jail. He'd been in the county jail about 2 months.
It's sad that a 12-year-old had to go through what I had to go through. For days I cried and cried and cried. I'm trying right now not to tear up, but it's kind of hard sometimes, They jerked me off my bicycle. They took me out on a road. I don't know what road it was. That's where it started all beginning. I was beaten pretty bad, and you like it, you know it, and slapping me and hitting me with his fist, and one guy's got one holding it open, the other's got the other. And when I come out of a coma, I had several stitches down there, and because they tore me up bad. And the doctor said it's a 99% chance that I can't have kids. When I was younger, I really wanted a kid so bad, and I love kids, but I never had any kids.